Hello, welcome to Econometrics Melody. In this tutorial, we'll deal with the graph combine, title options, and axis options. These are useful for all the plot types. So let us prepare our dataset. This is the dataset that we are going to use for this tutorial. And the first option or the first topic is graph combine. So how do we combine the graphs? So let us create a basis graph or the graph, and we are going to save it in our disk by this name called em. So this option, saving em, it will save it on the disk. And now let us create other graphs, and we are going to save it in our memory. So by default, graphs that we draw, they are in the memory if we don't specify any name, or this option called saving. Now they are the later one, those graphs, they are saved in the memory, and the graphs in the memory we can combine them by simply specifying their name without this extension. So we have 6 graphs or 7 graphs, and we want to combine them together, and this combination of the graph we want to name it as A. So this is graph A, and this is the combination. Now if we want to combine the graph in memory along with the graph stored on the disk, so these are the options that we use to call the graph stored on the disk by specifying the name along with the extension, or mentioning it within the quote along with the extension or without its extension. So the first one, the graph and the memory graph, there are 4 graphs. So this one, this is the this graph is stored on the disk, and the rest of others, they are stored on the memory. So another way of calling the graph stored on the disk is by enclosing the name and extension within the quote, and the other rest 3 graphs, they are stored on the memory. So again we get the same result. And another way of calling the same graph is by simply enclosing the name of the graph in the quote without its extension, and the other graphs in the memory simply we specify their name, and we should get the same result. Now these are the options that we can use along with our combination of the graphs. So we are going to explore some of them. Now let us combine the graph and specify the row. So there are four plot types or 4 graphs with different name, and we want to specify them in their row form. So rows 4 will depict the graph in their row form. So row form, and if we want to specify the graph, depict them in their column form, 4 different columns, we should specify this option called columns. Now we get the graphs in their column form, arranged in their column form, and we have specified 6 different types of graphs with 6 different names, and we want to specify them into 3 rows and 2 columns. So we'll get this arrangement, matrix arrangement. The graphs will be depicted in their row and column forms, so 3 rows and 2 columns, and we can specify again in the 2 rows and 3 columns. Now we'll get the result as per our specification, 2 rows and 3 columns, all the way 6 graphs. Now if we specify holes, so we want this block to be empty, so we have specified this number of graphs name, and we want to keep this 2nd, 4th, 6th and 8th block empty. So we'll get the result as per our specification, 2nd, 4th, 6th and 8th block empty. This is 2nd, 4th, 6th and 8th block empty. Now we can scale the graphs as well. So first of all, let us create a combination of our basis graphs and name it by the name A. So this graph will be our basis graph, and if we specify iscale 1.2, we are simply going to scale the labels, markers and symbols. So 1.2, 20%, we are going to increase this, and this is clear. And this is another way of specifying the scale by using asterisk and 1.2, and let us see if we see any change. So this is another way of specifying the scale, and let us combine them together and compare and contrast to see the differences. What will I scale to? And this is 1.2, 120% of the original form, and this is the specification of asterisk 1.2, and we don't see any change probably. So the second one, the specification of is iscale 1.2, we see the difference. Now if we specify alternate shrink, so this will shrink the basis graph to some label, and this combination will help us compare. So what are the changes, to track the changes actually. And let us say we are going to combine this A and the D1. Graph D is this shrink form of A, and we see the result. So this is the graph D. This is the some shrink form of A. And if we specify imargin, so we margin top, bottom, left and right margin, we have specified 0. So after combination we should not see any margins. And let us combine them and combine the resulting graph with the basis graph, and we will see the differences. So individual margins, so individual graphs, so their margins should collapse actually, 0 0, top, bottom, left and right. And do we get this result? Yes. So here these margins of the individual graphs should collapse each per our specification after combination. And let us move to another option called xcommon and ycommon, and let us create a basis graph. This is our basis graph, and they may have different x scale and y scale. And if we specify xcommon and ycommon, now we should get both the graphs in their same x and y scale after combination. So let us combine them. So we'll see the differences. So once you combine it, now so this graph, they have different x scale and y scale, and the second one, or the latter one, this is the result after having x and y, the common axis. Now we can manipulate the title as well. The title of the graph after combination, we'll explore this option title in great detail in our later section as well. So here box, the title will appear in box, it will extend, its color is green, and it will span, so it will extend up to the plot margin as well. Now let us see what are the different graph region and plot region. So this will give us a clear idea of the several regions of the graph. So the yellow, white and yellow, they comprise, or they make our plot region. So yellow one is the plot margin, and this rose color and the sand color, they make the graph region. And if we specify the option called nodraw, so the graph will be drawn but actually will not be displayed. So we have specified the em, 2em over here, and once we display it, we will see the graph. So if we specify no draw, this will not be displayed, but it will be drawn. Now let us see another option called scheme. So if we want to provide the scheme, we are economist. So after combination, the graph should take this scheme, or should be displayed using this scheme, and let's combine them together in order to compare the result. And this is all about our graph combination. So this is the economics scheme. So the outer border, this will help us distinguish from the other one. And if we say this color and this border, this is of the economics scheme, and this one, this is our basis graph. And let us drop them all. This is all about our graph combination. And let us explore the title options, and again let us see what are the margins for any graph, margins or regions actually. White and yellow will constitute a plot region, and this rose and the sand color, they constitute the graph region. And let us see what are the titles. So the possible titles for two-way plot types. So these are the possible titles: the main title, subtitle, and this T stands for top, B stands for bottom, L left and right. So each of these dimensions, they have two title and subtitle maybe, and this is the place for node and caption. Now let us see what happens if we specify more than one quote. So here we have more than one quote, so this different quote will actually help break the line. So we'll get two lines: graphics Stata, the first one, and hearty welcome, the second one. And if we specify two titles, these options, two titles, so the latter one will be displayed here. Only hearty welcome will be displayed, because the latter will get its effect. It will override the any previous options. Now if we specify two titles, and if we add this option called suffix, sub option called suffix. This hearty welcome now will act as a suffix of the previous one, so this will appear at the later most part. And if we specify prefix, this will appear the first prefix, this will act as a prefix. Now hearty welcome as the prefix, and we later, if we combine this, we should see the differences. So hearty welcome and hearty welcome as a suffix, hearty welcome as a prefix. Now let us explore the position of this title, and let us see it for ourselves. We have region of loop for that. So center 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3, 4, and so on. Similarly, if we specify the option called ring 0, so this will locate the title at the center of the plot region, and this will revolve inside the plot region, inside the white color. The title will revolve inside this plot region. In the previous case, it was revolving outside the plot region. So this difference is due to the specification of ring 0. Now let us explore the other option called box and expand. First of all, we will simply write box only, so the box will appear that fits exactly to the title. And if we want to extend it to the plot region, we need to write box and expand, expand, so we get the box up to the plot region. It excludes the margin, actually plot margin. Now if you want to center it, so if we want to include this plot margin as well, we'll have to specify the option called span, and the box will expand all the way to this plot margin and it will center. Now this is all about the title options. Let us drop all of the plots graph that we don't require and quickly move to another option called axis choice options. We can choose the axes. Let us run the first default graph. We have only 2 variables, dropline of income and input. So by default, the main y-axis and the main x-axis will be activated, but if we specify x-axis 1 and y-axis 1, so it is irrelevant whether we specify it or not. And for any one plot type, we have only 2 variables, and if we specify x-axis 2, then if we want to draw them in the second or alternate x-axis and y-axis, we won't get the result because we have only 2 variables. So by default, they are plotted on the first x-axis and y-axis, and if we combine them together, we won't see any differences. So they are one and the same. Now if we want to activate both the axes, y-axis and x-axis, we need to specify x-axis 1 2, y-axis 1 2. This will activate both the main and alternate axis, and at most we can, now let us see, now we have 2 different plot types. So by default, the first y-axis and the second x-axis will be activated, and we can manipulate them. Here we want this for the second plot type, we want to plot its x-axis on the alternate x-axis and its y value on the alternate y-axis, and let us see the result of the same graph. So this, let us combine them together. So by default, only the first x-axis and first y-axis will be activated. By default, first x-axis and first y-axis will be activated, and this is the result of the second plot type. And if we activate the second x-axis and second y-axis and draw them in their respective form, we get this result. So now we have 3 plot types, and we want x-axis 1, we want this import the x to be drawn on the first x-axis. Now if we see the result, if we look at the result, we don't see it the way we wanted it to, or the way we have it specified. So we wanted our import variable for the third plot type to be plotted on the first x-axis, but we didn't get it. Our first it is transferred to the second x-axis. So in order to solve that problem, we can specify, or we can restructure this, and we can specify or activate our third x-axis and third y-axis. So we have activated third x-axis and third y-axis, so we get this result. So import for first and low for second, and again import for third. These are the different plot types. And if we look at it, import at x-axis for first and low for second, and again import for third, and so on. These are the values for y-axis: close, high, and income. And if we see the first, close, high, and income, these are the y values. So we can at most activate 9 x-axis and 9 y-axis, and we have tried to activate some of them. So 3 y-axis and 4 x-axis, and let us see 3 y-axis and 4 x-axis, and let us drop them all. This is all about our axis choice option. Now let's quickly move to our axis label options. We have x-axis, y-axis, z-axis, and for the time series t-axis as well. And label, so if you specify label, we get the label as well as major tick. For getting only tick, we need to specify this word called tick. And for minor tick, we see this em.label, and minor em.label uses both the tick as well as label. And if we specify em.tick, we get only the tick. And there are some of the rules, and let us explore some of them here. In our first case, we are going to label the x-axis at 120 and at 200. So 200 will be further labeled or overwritten by this term called thank you. And let us say it for ourselves: x label 120 and 1200, 120 and 200. So at the point of 200, we are going to overwrite it by thank you. So this is the result. And if we specify this option called hash 20, so we get at most 20 major ticks along with the label, suitable label. Stata will do it for ourselves. And if we specify this option called x tick only, so here it was x label will bring both the tick as well as the label, but x tick will help us get only the ticks. Let us see it for ourselves. So these are the tick and some of the labels by default. Now let us switch to the minor label. So M stands for minor label. So again, label will help us display both the label and ticks. So here the rule is different. We specify 2 hash and any number, so the output is that number minus 1. So we'll get here 4 minor ticks along with label between the major labels. So 120, 140, 160, 180, and these are the major labels. In between them, we get the minor labels. Similarly, if we specify em.tick and double hash and this number, so we get n-1, 5-1. Again, 4 minor ticks only between the major labels. So this is clear. We can also label as the date. Now for that, let us sort our data set by the symbol number, and let us time set it, this variable symbol number, format it is a quarterly format, and let us draw a line of export, and we say these are the default labeling, and we can manipulate that as well. And we want time label to be none, so we won't say any label. And if we want the label to appear only minimum and maximum of the time period, so this is the minimum and it's the maximum of the time period. And we have manipulated its label, the major label, tick as well as the label, and the minor label, that is tick as well as the label. So double hash 3 only, it means we will get only 2 ticks and labels in between the major label, so only 2. So in between this major, we get only 2 values. And these are some of the options for manipulating the labels as well. And let us explore some of them, and let us label the alternate axis differently. So we are going to activate the x-axis and y-axis, both the x-axis and y-axis, alternate and main, and we are going to label the alternate and main x-axis differently following this rule. And let us see, this should be EPDN by this result. So this is the main x-axis and this is the alternate x-axis. We have activated it and we have specified different labeling following this rule. Now let us, if we set the value label, what happens? So let us create a basis graph for that. So these are the labels 1 to 8 and its value label. So it is the district actually. So we get the name of the districts. And if we specify no label, no ticks, so this should be self-explanatory. We won't get any label and no ticks. So if we format it, so 1 to 8, so we are going to consider it as a monthly time, and angle is 90 and alternate. So we see this alternate display of the labels and they are in their month, and angle is 90 degree. So label gap, label size, and label color, this is again self-explanatory. This is the label gap, label color, and label size. This is blue and the size is 6. And tick line position, tick length, tick line width, and tick line color. And we have manipulated this for both the EX label major and minor, and we should see the differences. So these are the measures, and it's what is its color. So its color is stone color, and the minor, its color is pink. This is the minor, and these are the options that we have specified. Now let us manipulate the grid. So for both the major X and minor X, we have specified the options, and let us see. So for the major ticks, we have no G extend. So we see the grid for both the major and minor, and for the major ticks, the grid won't extend to the margin. So at this point, so after every 4 minor ticks, we don't see any, we see a gap. So this is due to no extend. And if we don't write anything, so we should not get, by default it will extend all the way to the plot margin as well. So now we don't see any such lines. So again, if we run this, for the major ticks, this should not extend to this plot margin, and this is the plot margin filled with the blue color. And if we run this, we don't, for this major grid, we don't see this extension of the line. And let us see other line color, G for grid, grid line color, grid line width, and grid line pattern, and this should be evident by the name itself. So grid line color is a red for the major X ticks, major ticks or major graphs. So this is red, and it won't extend because we have specified this option called no extend. And for the minor one, it's yellow and it's lined with this line pattern is dash. So these are the minors ticks. So this is all about our axis label options, and we have explored some of its options as well. So these are the axis label options. Now let us move to another option, another useful option which is common for all the plot types, and it is axis scale options. And we can use the scale, and here we are going to use axis scale 40 to 300, in the range of 40 to 300, and this should be clear. So the data actually is from 120 to 220, but we have used from 40 to 300. And then these are some of the options. We can always explore them, and let us see some of them. So if we specify log, reverse, and alternate, we will see the, is it axis scale. So this is for alternate x-axis. For alternate reverse, we have reverse, it's scaling. So 0 to 6000 from right to left. The default is from left to right, and it's in their logged form. So this is their log form. Now if we specify no log, no reverse, and alternate, yet we are going to use the alternate x-axis, now they are in their normal form. So let us combine them together and we'll see the differences. Similarly, we can on and off the axis, fill, and no line. So let us, here we are going to off the axis scale, and we won't see anything, no label, no title, and so on. Now let us specify off and fill. So this fill will allocate some space for the title and the labels, though they are not displayed. And if we specify no line, we won't see any line on the x-axis, but we will see the labels and titles. and let us combine them together and we'll see the differences for ourselves. X all, fill, and here snow line. So these are, now let us see line, fxtend, and so on. So let us see it by the help of example. So here we have used no extend and line. What happens? So we will see a line, but that line will not extend all the way to its plot region. So if we specify extend, this will extend to its plot region. And if we specify fxtend, this should again extend up to the plot region. And let us combine them and let us focus on the X line actually, extend and so on. This is a simple one. This is a very simple case. And now let us move to other options. Title gap. So what do we have? Title gap of -6 and outer gap of 0. So title gap of -6. So this, if we see this title called practice, so from its default position it has traveled to -6 from bottom to upwards. Now it will be easy if we specify some other denomination, title gap 5 and outer gap 9, and we can, once we combine them together, we will see the differences for ourselves. So this is the result. Here the title gap is 5 and the outer gap is 9. Similarly, we can manipulate the look and feel of this line as well, and we have specified the line color to be blue line with 0.9 and L pattern to be dash, and this is clear. Now let us drop all the plot types that are in the memory and quickly move to the axis title options. Axis title option is similar to the title option that we have explored in our earlier section, and let us see what does it have to offer. We have axis title, this is first, and we have referred to the first axis and second axis. So axis will have two x-axis, the first and the second x-axis, and they have different title. Similarly, if we specify suffix, so the suffix, this will appear at the last. If you look at it, econometrics melody is a suffix, this will appear at the last. And if we specify a prefix, this will appear at the first and the other will appear at the last. Now econometrics melody will appear at the first and graphics Stata at the last. And for our clear comparison, we can combine it, three of them, and let us see whole set 2. The second block will be empty after combination. So the second block is empty, first, second, and here econometrics melody is a suffix, econometrics melody is the prefix, and these are the options for this. Further, we can decorate this title place, so we can use the text box options, and these are the text box options, and I have used most of them over here in a single plot, and we can explore it and let us enjoy it for the time being, and we will get this result. So we have manipulated its label size, color, background, and for this box as well, line 0.9, L color is green, and the line pattern is dot. We expand, it expands all the way to this plot region. Placement is at 7, this is at 7 o'clock position, height is 14, width is 100, box margin 3, and so on. So this is very simple one. Now let us drop all the graphs that are in the memory, and probably this is it for this tutorial. It's a time to thank you all for your precious time. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, Econometrics Melody.